you first joined the NWO, you were going by Mark Bagwell. How did the nickname Buff Bagwell come to be?
Great question. Um, I was going by Marcus Alexander Bagwell, which is my real name. Um, and Dusty loved my real name. He loved it. My parents loved that I was called my real name, and I hated it. Hated it. I just didn't. I remember Johnny B. Bad, Mark Marrow, used to drill me all the time. Too cold, Scorpio, and Marcus Alexander Bagwell. And I go, come on, man. Now, several years later, Mark Merrill called me and apologized deeply because our careers had kind of reversed, and I was the big star.
Sure.
But Marcus, me and Mark have always been super good friends. But I remember the day he called me and apologized about doing that to me. But he did it a lot, a lot. He did it all the time, and the boys loved it. And he was right though. It was a stupid name. It was my name, but it was not a good wrestling name. Um, but it was my name. Dusty wasn't going to have it. He wanted Marcus Alexander Bagwell. So when the NWO thing happened, I knew it was a chance for me to do something with my name. I didn't know what. And I remember being on a flight, and it was me and Luger on a flight with everybody. But me and Luger were up talking. We were standing up in first class talking on a long plane ride, like from Seattle, and we're talking. I can't remember what names we had come up with yet. I can't remember what we came up with, but were trying to throw names against the wall. And back in the back of first class in the dark, we hear, "What about Buff?" And we were like, "What?" And it's in the shadow. The light turns on. And it's Nick Patrick. Nick Patrick says, "What about Buff Bagwell?" And me and Luger went, "Buff Bagwell. Oh my God, that's it." And it was just every person that heard it just chuckled with happiness, like, "Oh my God, that's great." Everybody loved it. It was an instant good decision. It was an instant, not one person was like, I don't know about that name. It
Yeah.
was perfect. It was perfect. But Nick Patrick is who named me on that. It's incredible. But Nick Patrick named me. So soon he came up with it. But my goal was I didn't want to be called Marcus. I wanted to be Buff Bagwell, you know, in this
Right.
corner, Buff Bagwell. WCW wouldn't do it, brother. They wouldn't do it. They dropped Alexander and called me Marcus Buff Bagwell. And I carry that name to this day because it's like Dwayne the Rock Johnson, you know, Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know, I dig it and it makes sense, but they wouldn't drop it. They wanted to keep the Marcus, and that's okay with me. I ain't like I hate my name. I
Right.
just didn't want to wrestle under my own name. Everybody wants to wrestle under another persona, like, you know, Diesel, Razor Ramon, Sting, you know, in this corner, Steve Borden. He didn't want that, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So it's something we all want to do, but I just had the chance. And it's tough changing your name. I mean, believe it or not, there's not as many fans now. But I remember 10 years ago, there was fans that would say to me, I like Marcus Alexander Bagwell better than Buff. I don't think nobody says that anymore, but there is some fans that remember that old days of Marcus Alexander Bagwell with
Sure.
the spiked up hair and no goatee, no earrings, and just a rookie kid. And I enjoy it too, um, but it was a clean cut, you know, good example of a rookie of the year guy, and that was Marcus Alexander Bagwell.
Sure. And I mean, it was a big difference and you looked significantly different, but also it was a more mature look when you grew the goatee and you were now Buff Bagwell. I mean, it's interesting. I go back and I'll see when you brought the beard down a little bit towards the Buff Daddy time, you look much younger than you did, you know, a year or two prior. So it
Yeah,
made a big difference. You know,
it
you
did.
changed yourself a lot. But I think you mentioned Stone Cold Steve Austin, Dwayne the Rock Johnson. You've always maintained ownership of your name, and it's probably due to Dusty, you know, having you use your real name, because I think to this day, Steve Austin does not own Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I don't think he does either. I know,
I
the
think
Steve
that's the recent dispute with him in the company too. He wanted Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they would not give him that.
and and the truth is with me is I I think somewhere along the lines I owned the word buff, but I didn't know, and it was nobody saw Vince coming in to buy us. So I really believe Vince let me have my name. I really do, and I don't know why. Because I told you this, the story is had to I had to get a lawyer to get my top hat back.
Really,
I put one of my top hats on the road with the truck, so I had to carry it around everywhere. It
with
would just always
WWE.
be it would be for the WWE. It would always be there on the trucks, and they wouldn't give it back to me. And I literally had to
Wow.
get my agent, Brad Small, to contact the WWF lawyers and get my hat back. And through all of that, I never had to say formerly known as. I never had
Wow.
to say that. I was Buff Bagwell on my very first stuff in Canada, in Australia with the WWA.
Wow. Well, I think, and I'm somewhat familiar with the laws on that, but I believe it's because even if they like, obviously they bought out WCW, but all the WCW guys, because they had previously used the name over there, or they had used it independent of WWF, WWE later on, you would in court be able to prove that we used it prior. So I think that's why Lex Luger, Sting, Goldberg, Scott Steiner, they never had that issue because they started outside of the company before
Yeah,
going in, under that banner. So
right.
that makes sense.